Well, hi and welcome back to a boat called Wanda. So, as the video says, bought a house, built a workshop, now I'm back working on Wanda again at last, finally. So just to give you a bit more detail about that, October last year I bought this house. I was living in a rented property before, and so I moved up here, and it's a really nice place. I'm really happy. But the biggest problem was there was no garage, there was no shed, and it's a very inaccessible property. I'm at the end of probably a 40-metre driveway that's incredibly steep and narrow, and I can't get any sort of truck or anything like that up here. Anything beyond a sort of commercial van is really difficult. So the first thing I had to do when after I moved in was create some sort of space to work, because obviously my previous place I'd set up a little workshop in the garage there, as well as the shipping container. I did try and use the shipping container for a while as a sort of workshop, but there was just too much crap in there and there was nowhere to work. So instead I invested my time in building this workshop here. Now this is a kit workshop, so I didn't actually sort of design and build this all from scratch. It came in components. It's just a log cabin that fits together really nicely. So apart from the problem of getting it up here, because each piece basically had to get carried up the driveway, it was actually quite easy to put together. The biggest challenge I had was this space here was just went all the way over there, and there was several really tall trees, so I had to clear this area, and that took quite a lot of time. Once I'd done that, then I had to do some leveling. You can see I sort of dug out this part here. There was some really nasty tree roots here that took ages to dig out by hand, literally. So yeah, then I had to remove all these stones. There's an old like chicken shed there, and create this cutting here to try and level it. Obviously building some small retaining walls. These are about 450mm high, so that wasn't too bad. But the block slopes quite a lot. So on the other side I had to build this up. So you can see that's my level there. Yeah, so on the other side I had to build this up. So this is sort of quite high in this corner. Anyway, I started the groundworks probably November last year, literally as soon as I moved in. You know, cleared this area, cut some trees down, started the groundworks. And in the UK from about December through to April, May, it just didn't seem to stop raining. Every day was wet, so it took such a long time just to clear this out and do this groundwork. And then I laid some concrete pier foundations under this, and then I built a suspended floor using 150mm timber joists to create this platform for this to sit onto. So let's have a quick look inside. Now, just to be clear, it's an absolute mess and it's far from finished. I'm still putting it together. I don't have any electrics in here yet, so I've got everything running off a power board, and I've rigged some lighting up there. I've had my warp drive there, which you might remember from previous episodes, warming this room up. But essentially it's two segments. There's this space here and a bit of a dividing wall, and then a second space here, which you can't see because there's lighting's poor in here. But I'm going to have this section for all of my tools and a bit of a workbench, and then just use this section here, and I can have like a plastic sheet that I can drop down to make this the sort of dirty room. If I'm grinding or sanding, then I can separate this space here. So anyway, that's why I've been so busy and so absent for a while. I'm just really delighted to be back in a position where I can start to work again. So I think the last video I put out, I was just up to discovering that rotten bulkhead and had cut that out. So in a minute I'll present the next video that came after that. This is again quite old, it was from last year, and that will then bring us up to date as to where I am today, and so everything from that point going onwards will be pretty much real time. Okay, so let's have a look at that. Hi, and welcome back to a boat called Wanda. So I'm back in my garage for the moment, doing a little bit of weekend work as the weather's turning cooler. It's quite nice to be able to work into here.
Excuse me, got a bit of a cold going on. So let's go straight back to where I finished up last time, which was cutting out that bit of rotten bulkhead, and we can take a closer look at that. So here it is, and this is the side that was facing onto the fridge. So this was the rear side. That was the piece that I tried to get back to good wood, which I couldn't. I kept on grinding through layers and layers, and of course, no wonder why I couldn't get back to good wood, because this is what I was faced with. So yeah, I can just push my screwdriver through that and all the tabbings come off. So that was rotten. Now, this line up here is where the top of the bench met the bulkhead. And then this line here was where the top lid of the refrigerator was, and so the water was leaking between the bottom part of the refrigerator and the top lid, which was just sitting on the mold with a little bit of silicone, and the silicone failed. So pretty sure, yeah, I guess as the boat was heeling over, any liquid in the fridge would drain out and then gather here. So yeah, I'm just really glad I found it and I cut it out. So the only part I'm not sure on is where I cut it back here, whether this is good wood or not, because it's still a little bit stained, and it might still be a little bit soft. So I might just cut a little bit out here and see what it's like, just so that I can be confident that the other side here, of course, which is still in the boat, is good. And then I just traced around and made up this, and I cut a rebate here. So this is 22mm thick marine ply, and there's an 11mm rebate here, which I'll also do on the part that's in Wanda, and then I should get a relatively nice fit, and then of course I can just epoxy up everything afterwards. Alright, so definitely I can feel that this plug up here was a bit tighter than this one here. So what I might do on this part that's still in Wanda is to just maybe grind back the first layer, and I might also drill some fairly large holes through it and put some thickened epoxy all the way through so that there's a lot of grip. Yeah, so to be honest, that timber that's left in Wanda, the part that's not cut out, judging by the the plug I just took out, it's probably about 85% okay. It's like not quite perfect, and I was able to get the screwdriver and pull away some of those layers, although there was reasonable resistance. So I think the problem is I don't want to keep on cutting away because then there'll be nothing left, and I'll have that big bulkhead that I'll need to tab in, and I don't want the boat to shift, you know, if I cut it all out. So I think what I'll do is, once I scarf it back in, I will drill several holes all the way through that go from one side to the other, fill it with thickened epoxy, and then epoxy it on both sides, and all of those holes will basically bond both sides of that laminate together. I think that's the best way to deal with the fact that I don't want all the mechanical strength to come from the epoxy and the outer layer of plywood. I want some of that mechanical strength to come from, you know, drilling through as well. Okay, so yeah, I can go out and fit that next time I go back to Wanda. Next job.
Okay, this is where I finished up last time. I cut that piece out and I removed this fridge here, and that's the fridge here, which I don't think I'm going to use again. So I've cleaned up all of this, got it right back to some good laminate, so I can tab this bulkhead scarf piece back in that I'm going to do. So here I'll just undo these bits and pieces and get rid of this sort of stuff, and then I think I'll use my sander with a high grit to try and get all the varnish off. I won't bother with the angle grinder again. Sorry, the light's a bit funny in here at the moment, but hopefully you can see. So yeah, I've just finished up sanding this back, and you can see the line here, right? Back that way. So that's where the refrigerator was. This is where the rotted part was. This is not rotten, it's not delaminating, it's not 100% though, it's not as good as it was when it first came out of the factory. But rather than cut it out and have to like shore up this bulkhead to replace it, I'm going to leave it in place, and where these lines are here, I'm going to drill a series of holes using my hole saw, maybe 20mm holes, and fill it with thickened epoxy all the way through here. So I'm kind of putting some strength back into it just in case it's compromised at all, and then I'll epoxy laminate it on both sides with some nice 450 quad axial, you know, maybe 3 or 4 of those to build up the strength. So I think that'll be fine. It could be worse. Okay, so that's the piece there that I've cut out, and there's a rebate there, probably a little bit snug done there, so I can take it back a little bit like that. But everything else seems to be okay, so now I can just mark out where I need to cut the rebate. Right, well, I'm going to call it a night, because the one tool that I didn't bring, that is always the tool I forget, is a power drill, because I need to get the hole saw and drill holes through the bulkhead to fill it up with thickened epoxy before I laminate it on. But anyway, it's getting late, so I'll leave it here. But that's the piece just sitting there, and the good thing is when I cut the rebate on the other side to seat that in, I dug into over halfway through that material, about 12mm, this is like 20mm board, and when I used the router to dig the rebate in, the wood was really good. So even though you can see that black stain there, it's not perfect. I think this is probably only really on the surface, and if I try and scratch it with a screwdriver or dig into it, I can't really do it. So the wood, you know, the wood is fine. It's not compromised too much, although of course there's that stain there. So yeah, again, what I'll do is I'll come back with the hole saw tomorrow and drill hole saw samples through there just to see what it's like, and assuming that it's as I think it is, then yeah, I'm just going to sort of honeycomb it, drill out holes and fill it up with thickened epoxy, and then lay sheets over the whole thing, including the scarf piece. So yeah, I'll be back tomorrow to do that. Well, it's 2 weeks later, and it's my weekend again, and I'm back down at Wanda. This hole was originally for the ducting, which is 100mm, which I don't want to use anymore, so I've just got a plug that's positioned there so I can fill it up and squeeze some thickened epoxy in the gap and then laminate over it. And these holes here that I've drilled for 2 reasons. First of all, I just wanted to inspect the core to see what the condition was like, and as you can see here, actually the core is pretty good. It's not perfect, but the wood is really tightly bound together. It's not sort of flaky or fibrous, so I think it's good enough to keep. And the other reason why I wanted to drill all these holes out is because obviously this bulkhead is going to be part of a sandwich construction. There's laminate on both sides, and really the strength there is down to the sort of shear forces that you can get, and that is dependent on the mechanical connection between the timber in the middle and the laminate on the outside. And you can do all sorts of things. I've went over it with a 40 grit grinder, or you can get a Stanley knife and cross hatchet to try and really key up the wooden surface to try and get as much mechanical bonding with the laminate as possible. But the reasons why I drilled those holes is I want to try putting together thickened epoxy through all the holes and do a wet on wet, so I laminate up with the thickened epoxy on both sides, and so I should get a chemical bond through each piece. The far side with the laminate is through the thickened epoxy in the middle, across the other laminate on the other side. So I'm going to try and see what happens, but I think it's going to be almost like a pair of fingers sort of grabbing onto that bulkhead, rather than just having two sheets of fiberglass either side, relying on that sheer strength. I'm going to sort of clamp it together with all these pieces of epoxy. So that's the theory. Let's see whether that's a good idea or not, but it feels like a good idea to me to try out. Right, so I'm going to mix up my thickened epoxy, start with scarfing the piece of timber in, and then get to work laminating. Hopefully it'll get above 5 degrees today, so it'll start to cure.
Now unfortunately that's where I ran out of footage, but after I shot that last piece, I then went on to laminate it all up. So I'd put the epoxy through all of those holes, and whilst it was still wet, I then laid up, I think I was using 450 triaxial in the end with epoxy, and I put I think 2 pieces behind that, and then I, whilst that was still wet, I then tabbed in around the bulkhead to the shell of the boat, so that was all done in one go. And that was probably the last time I really did any serious work. That was probably the end of November last year. And then following that, I've just spent, you know, every weekend for about 6 months either waiting for it to dry up here or doing some work on this workshop, and then I've only just really got back into going down to Wanda and working on her over the last sort of 4 to 6 weeks. So anyway, you know, I'm here now, I've got my workshop, I've got all my tools here, I've got a lot of organising to do, but yeah, I'm back into the boat restoring process. So next time I'll be able to start working on the lazarette floor. So I made up that piece of plywood. I brought that in here so I can cut out the square now, and then start to laminate up a lid to put into that to make a sort of hatch area. That's what I'll be working on next. So thank you very much for watching and coming back to the station if you've not seen anything for a year. yeah, it's good to be back into it, and I'll give you another video update in 2 weeks from now. Okay, bye for now.